All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a genuinely heartbreaking sequence of events, the station nightclub fire. We'll be unpacking the catastrophic systemic failures and the really complex legal aftermath that followed. It's a heavy topic, for sure, but breaking down exactly what happened and why is absolutely crucial for understanding how safety, responsibility, and the law all crash into each other. So let's get into the facts. We have to start with one incredibly heavy number, 100. 100 people lost their lives in just a matter of minutes. It's a statistic that's honestly hard to wrap your head around, right? But it grounds everything we're going to talk about today. Every single systemic failure in every legal battle we cover traces right back to the tragic loss of these 100 individuals. To really grasp the sheer scale of this tragedy, we have to look back to February 20th, 2003. What was supposed to be just a fun, regular concert night turned into literally one of the deadliest nightclub fires in U.S. history. On top of the 100 lives lost, another 230 people were injured. This wasn't just a fire. It was a devastating mass casualty event that permanently altered hundreds of lives and shattered a community. Okay, Section 1, the night of the fire. Let's look at exactly how this unfolded. Looking at the numbers, out of the 462 people inside the club that night, the vast majority were directly impacted. 100 people died and 230 were injured. Only 132 managed to escape unharmed. The whole nightmare started when the band, Great White, kicked off their opening song. The pyrotechnics they set off instantly ignited this highly flammable soundproofing foam lining the stage walls. And what's truly terrifying here is the speed. Just look at this timeline. At 0 seconds, the pyrotechnics start. Within just 30 seconds, half a minute, the entire stage is engulfed in flames. And in a mere 5.5 minutes, the whole club was completely consumed. We're talking about a window so narrow that hundreds of people barely had time to realize the danger before it was right on top of them. Because that window was so incredibly short, the escape was frenzied and just totally desperate. Human instinct kicked in, right? So most people rushed straight back toward the narrow front hallway, the exact same way they came in. And this created a massive, fatal bottleneck. The entryway was suddenly packed with terrified people trying to squeeze out all at once. In the sheer chaos, with smoke and flames literally closing in from behind, dozens piled on top of each other, creating a tragic situation where people were actually trampled. Moving on to Section 2, a preventable disaster. Now, here's the thing you really need to understand. This wasn't just a freak accident or a single mistake. It was a complete cascade of human systemic failures. First off, you had the illegal indoor use of fireworks that were strictly meant for outside. Then, those sparks hit that highly flammable soundproofing foam. And maybe the most critical failure of all, the building owners thought they were exempt from needing sprinklers because of the building's age. But recent structural changes had actually removed that exemption. Yet, somehow, fire inspectors totally missed it. And that brings us to what is easily the most heartbreaking finding of the entire investigation. It all came down to sprinklers. Investigators concluded that the club was legally required to have a sprinkler system that night, but it simply didn't. Had those sprinklers been there, they would have contained the fire long enough for everyone to get out safely. It is a really stark reminder of exactly why strict building codes and rigorous fire inspections exist in the first place. All right, Section 3, the legal fallout. Let's talk about the aftermath. Fast forward to December 9th, 2003, and prosecutors bring down an absolutely staggering number, 200 counts of involuntary manslaughter. That's 2 counts for every single one of the 100 victims. It was a massive number, clearly signaling the heavy legal weight the state was dropping on the people they deemed responsible. So, who was facing these charges? Well, they were leveled against 3 key individuals at the very center of the night's operations. First, Daniel M. Bischel. He was the former road manager for Great White and the one involved with setting off the pyrotechnics. The other 2 were Jeffrey and Michael Derderian, the brothers who co-owned the station nightclub. On top of that, a separate investigation uncovered another pretty glaring oversight. The Derderian brothers were hit with over $1 million in fines for failing to carry workers' compensation insurance. Tragedies often have a way of exposing these underlying issues. And tragically, 4 of the club employees who died in the fire didn't even have the required insurance coverage. This takes us to Section 4, accountability and sentencing. Let's see how this all played out in court. As the trials loomed, we saw a massive split in legal strategies. On one side, Daniel Bichel went completely against his lawyer's advice. He chose to plead guilty to all 100 counts and issued a formal apology to the victims' families. On the flip side, the Derderian brothers initially pleaded not guilty, but then changed their pleas to no contest, specifically to avoid going to trial altogether.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite those totally diverging pleas, the judge actually handed Daniel Beischel and Michael Derderian the exact same sentence. 15 years in prison, with 4 to serve, 11 suspended, and 3 years probation. Jeffrey Derderian? He avoided prison time entirely, walking away with a 10-year suspended sentence, probation, and 500 hours of community service. The judge did note, though, that Beischel was highly unlikely to reoffend.
As the years went by, something deeply human and honestly really surprising happened. When parole hearings came around in 2007, the state parole board got about 20 letters from the victims' families. But these weren't angry letters demanding Beischel stay locked up. Actually, the majority of them were expressing sympathy and support for his parole. The contents of those letters are just profound. The families pointed out that to them, Beischel was the only one who really stood up and admitted his role in the disaster. It also came out that he had taken the time to write handwritten letters to the families of every single one of the 100 victims. His choice to just own it and plead guilty really resonated with a lot of the people grieving. Ultimately, both men who did serve prison time were released pretty close to each other. Beischel was released from prison on March 19, 2008, and Michael Derderian, who was actually supposed to get out later in 2009, was granted early release by the board in June 2009 for good behavior. So as we wrap up this explainer, we're looking back at a perfect storm of missed inspections, missing sprinklers, totally diverging legal strategies, and yet identical prison sentences. It leaves us with this profound, really difficult question. When catastrophic, systematic failures cost 100 lives, what does true accountability actually look like? It's a messy intersection of building codes, human error, and the legal system, and it's something to seriously chew on long after we finish up here.